Art requires commitment, and commitment is rather difficult by its very nature. It's hard to stick to something for the long term when it isn't easy, and art is kind of seldom easy. It requires us to do the same thing over and over again. And I know from the outside, it often looks like, well, you just need to learn these 17 or 25 things, and then voila, you know how to make art. You know how to draw, you know how to paint, or you know how to sculpt. But anyone who's spent more than a couple afternoons working at it knows that it requires time and it requires commitment. It requires coming back to the same thing time and time again and trying it. And because that process can be rather daunting, difficult, or even just boring, it requires some resilience. You have to stick to it for the sake of sticking to it, to prove to yourself that you really want to do this, to slowly teach yourself how to do this, whatever this is. Because not only does it require this commitment and this amount of time, but it requires a lot of individualistic learning because each of our paths are so different from the other ones. And yet, as our paths diverge, and they really do like the branches on a tree, we still find this camaraderie with one another. It's a very strange thing. I don't know a lot of other realms that really require community in the same way that art does. I wonder if it's specifically linked to it being a creative thing. I find that writers often need community in the same way that artists do. But I don't see this in a lot of other areas in my life. Sometimes it's things that are noble and difficult. They require community. But art is often not thought of in those terms, though I would argue that it is both. That art is noble and it is difficult. Noble because it is perhaps the truest, most human thing we can possibly do. Recording our thoughts, our emotions, our feeling, our history, and putting it down in some way that can be interpreted without the need of language. You see, that's a really important component here. It's part of the reason why art history is so prevalent and why it dwarfs so many other areas of history that are not just straight up history. Because you can look at artwork from thousands of years ago, and with very limited context, you can understand what you're looking at. There is a depth and universality to art. And even going back as far as we possibly can, it has always required this commitment, this dedication, this stick-to-itiveness. And I've dwelt on this concept and this idea many, many times, particularly here on this channel, but in speaking with other students and in just dealing with my own mental processes. I wish that I could say that every day it's easy to get to making art, but you all know that that's a lie. Most days I'm able to sit down and make something for a time, and it's productive and it's enjoyable. But there are many more days where I simply get bogged down by the realities of life and I forget that I enjoy doing this and I forget to make things. It might seem funny sometimes when you watch what I draw on this channel when I talk about serious things or things that have just a serious tone, as I might categorize this particular episode. And then you see the robot forming in the background, this awkward robot that's reaching up towards some wall, and there's some weird, goofy stuff I put on the side later on in this particular piece. But the reality is that the fun stuff keeps me in it. I'm committed to getting better at art, to investing time into it, to continue to grow, and I'm going to keep trying this thing, trying to be professional in different ways, either in education or in actually just selling the artwork itself, instructing others how to make their own, and continuing to broaden my own horizons. I'm committed to those things, but on most days, I have to remain committed to my robots and my dragons because they are the joy. And I think at some level, too, you have to analyze what are you committing to? There are a lot of people who watch a lot of videos on this platform. There are a lot of people looking for resources on how to get better at being an artist, how to enjoy their art more, how to make more progress, how to grow more efficiently. I know that many of us are looking for the elusive thing, this professional career that we might be able to dive into and get paid to make art. What a wonderful thing that would be for all of us. But I have to imagine that that's not everyone, that there's a sizable percentage of people who watch videos like this one and like the other ones I've described that really just enjoy art or want to get better at it for its own sake. That's me to a large degree. Obviously, I would like to be able to do this as my sole source of income at some point. But, it's going to have to wait a couple years until I have the time to actually invest in it and things clear up a little bit. And yet, even if I knew that there was no hope or chance of me ever going entirely professional as an artist, I would still never stop making art. I've gotten to the point where it's integrated enough into my life that I just know that I'm a worse person if I don't make things. So I'm committed to trying to be a professional artist. I'm committed to growing as an artist, but I'm also just committed to the art itself. And I think that a lot of you are similar. A lot of you might be exactly the same in that these other things are important, but they're less important than the art making process itself and the continual development of those skills and continuing to hone the ability to represent what you want to. There's something innately human in that. And this world is complicated. Right now, things are difficult, particularly here in the US. And, it's always kind of that way, but there's a lot of folk who are pretty disheartened. And it's easy to look at something like art during these eras of political unrest and think, like, this is such a waste of time. And on a really tangible level, it kind of is, but on an actual practical level, it's not, because it helps maintain sanity. It helps us continue to move forward and suck the marrow out of each day, and that's intrinsically important. The commitment to art is not a commitment only to career or to progress, but to the joy and the human quality of making things and putting things down onto paper or into digital space. In fact, if you're working with your hands, I think that it just elevates all of it to another level. I've argued in the past that subtractive stone sculpture is likely the highest form of art that has ever existed. And I feel confident in saying that from a lot of my time invested into teaching art history, studying art and art history, and also from the fact that it's not an art form that I practice. Specifically, it's too difficult and it takes too much time. And though I love the idea of engaging in it, I see it as quite daunting. And it's easier, I feel like, to be more objective when you're not talking about something that you have the natural bias towards. But it is an exceedingly difficult artistic process, and the results are tremendous. If you go and look at some of the sculptures of Bernini, they are phenomenal, and I would argue that they are the height of human expression. Though, they kind of fade into obscurity nowadays, and it's kind of a sad thing. But I guess the whole point here is talking about and thinking about commitment, that art requires it. And though commitment is difficult, it's hard to stick to something for a long period of time. And some would say that it's harder now than it ever has been, or that people are worse at it now than they ever have been. I don't know about that. I know that there are a lot of distractions, that the internet and social media show us far more now and in a higher concentration than we've ever seen before, and that's probably just damaging for the human psyche. But I don't know that people are just generally worse in those categories than they ever have been. Commitment has always been difficult. It's part of the reason why not everybody plays an instrument, why not everybody has learned a whole bunch of trades, because they all take time. They take commitment. How many people want to learn and speak a second language and play around with it for a while and then abandon it? Because it takes commitment. Commitment is a key in so much as there is any key to art and skill. I've talked several times on this channel about how there is no secret ingredient. And yet, if there was a secret ingredient, it would probably simply be time and commitment. sticking to something long enough for it to bear results. I'm reminded of gardening and growing fruit trees and things like that. And many people that I've run into over the years who struggle with them, they don't give it enough time. You don't give your plants enough time to produce something, or you don't stay dedicated to it for the entirety of the season, and your tomatoes die, your basil shrivels, and your spinach bolts. It's a sad thing. But commitment is hard. And I think not everybody who dives into something creative like art is ready for that level of commitment. Probably because we don't do a great job as artists of advertising the kind of commitment that it takes. Not that we are any kind of coalition who does something like this. But it is a little bit difficult from the outside to see how much time it takes. Part of this, I think, is people inflate this idea that, well, talented people draw and paint. And, if you don't have the talent, you just can't do it. And when they try it for a while and it doesn't work out, they're not growing or progressing as quickly as they wanted to. They just go, yes, I don't have the talent in this area, and then put it to the side. And that's easier. That's easier than just realizing that the person who plays violin or paints a beautiful painting has literally just dedicated themselves to it, that they've committed to it, and that you haven't. That's harder for the human psyche to wrap itself around, but it is, by and large, from my experience, from studies I've seen, and from 11 years of teaching, true. I never ran into a student who was capable of writing their own name in a legible manner who couldn't learn how to draw or paint in a better fashion than when they walked into that room. I had many students over the years who thought they could never produce anything beautiful, who were so excited by the end of the semester or year with the things they were able to produce. I wondered, I hate lying and I hate deceiving. And so I felt really trepidatious at the beginning of my teaching career about telling people, yes, you can, everyone can learn to draw. I wasn't sure. So I didn't say things like that because I didn't want to be dishonest. I didn't want to risk inflating somebody's sense of self and expectations, and then they run into disappointment. Life's disappointing enough as it is. I didn't want to add to that. But after doing it for maybe 5, 6, 7 years, I was pretty convinced that no, everyone can learn how to do this. It's just a matter of if you can dedicate the time. And the reason that I mention writing your name legibly is that most of the skills that are necessary to draw are simply wrapped up in, do you have the fine motor skills to make legible handwriting? If you can write and people can read your handwriting, you can learn how to draw or paint. How creative you are is a totally different thing, and that's a very difficult discussion. And I am still not sure that I know whether or not you can teach creativity. Creativity seems to be a much more difficult thing to teach, to pass on. It is something that can be encouraged and something that can be nurtured and grown, but I still do not know if I believe that creativity can be taught. I ran into that for years. I had many discussions with colleagues, and I was never content with any conclusion that I came to. I would lean towards probably not, but it's a discussion for another time. Let me know in the comments if you want to, have me ramble about that for a while. I think I might have done a podcast on it. I don't remember, but it's, this is number 115. So we've been here for a while on just the sketchbook sessions. But I hope that this has been beneficial to you. I know that the rambling here has been a little bit different than normal, perhaps. Maybe not. Maybe I've said that the last couple times, so maybe this is just what I do now. I don't know. I've had a lot of these discussions, and so generally I start with an idea and just kind of ramble for a while. But I guess the whole point of this is just, art requires commitment. We've all got different reasons that we commit ourselves to it, and the commitment is intrinsic. But I think that it is noble. I think that if you have dedicated yourself to this, whether you feel that you're improving or not, it makes you a better person. You are honing different skills that are allowing you to produce things, sure. But also, you're honing the skills of committing to a relationship, to your partner or spouse, to your friends, to your parents or your kids. Working on something with regularity like that is good just for you as a human being. And so I really truly do believe that art is not just this cool, beautiful, wonderful thing in and of itself. It is perhaps the most human thing we could do, but to practice it, to learn it, makes you a better person. I firmly believe I am a better husband, I am a better father, I am a better son, I am a better friend because I make art, because I have to. Maybe not everybody's built exactly the same way. That would totally make sense. But if I don't create things on an almost daily, certainly weekly basis, I am a worse version of me. And so I'm committed to making art, to getting better at art, to seeing how far this thing goes. And I would encourage you to take a look at yourself and see where you are committed, what you're committed to dissect it, to understand yourself a little bit better in all of this. Because the more you know yourself, the more satisfied you're going to be. And when you aren't satisfied, you'll be able to understand why and begin to work on it. Well, as always, thanks for being here. And thank you to my patrons too, who are on the screen right now. If you want to check out our Discord or the Patreon, they are both linked below. The Discord's a lovely little community where we make art together and talk about life and the things that plague artists. It's been good for me, and I think it's been good for the couple hundred folk that are there as well. Well, have a good one, y'all. See you soon.